Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. I'm a sword instructor, also a sword dealer, and I run a YouTube channel looking at everything to do with swords and historical combat. Now I have a movie fight review playlist which will be linked below here, and I'm gonna go back and look at some of the fights from Game of Thrones as well as some of your other movies and TV series. So if you've got any suggestions, then give us a like and a subscribe and suggest some other fights from movies and TV that I can review below. Let's have a look at that famous fight between Ned Stark and Jaime Lannister in the first season of Game of Thrones. You get a bit of a bargain deal here because of course there's several fights, it's not just between Ned and Jaime, so we get to see a bit of a melee and then we see finally the fight between Ned and Jaime. Before I go on, obviously I was a big fan of Game of Thrones when it was on, and it does have a lot of fights in it of average quality. Some are better than others, and clearly they had different fight directors in different locations. Generally speaking, Jaime's fights are some of the worst in the entire series. I don't know why that should be the case, but nevertheless, this is still an iconic piece of storytelling, and we should always view movie fights and TV fights as that, a part of storytelling. I understand they are not a demonstration of real martial arts and real sword fighting. That's fine. This is a bit of fun. Let's review it anyway.
To answer for his crimes.
Whoa, swing! So we've talked about the swing of swords coming out of scabbards many times on my channel. The fact is that yes, some scabbards, metallic scabbards, particularly brass and steel scabbards from the kind of industrial era, do indeed make a noise akin to this, and I think that's why this sound has come into movies, because when movies started being made, people were familiar with swords being drawn out of scabbards on military parade grounds. But this is a wood and leather scabbard. It will not make a swing when Jaime pulls it out.
Come, Stark. I'd rather you die sword in hand.
If you threaten my...
These are, of course, long swords that both of the main characters are using, which are hand and half swords. They can be used one-handed or two-handed, and they are used that way in this series. In fact, long swords seem to be very popular in modern movie fights. I don't exactly know why. They've just become very fashionable. Historically, they weren't actually in use for a huge period of time, and they certainly, in that period of time, weren't used by everybody. One-handed swords were always more common.
Your brother's a dead man.
You're right. Take him alive. Kill his Ned.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! What does their armour do? Their armour doesn't seem to provide any protection against those thrown spears at all. Now, I've done videos on thrown spears and peelings and things like this, and yes, javelins and spears are very powerful. They do have a lot of penetrative power, which is something we love on this channel. But armour, nevertheless, is supposed to work as armour. If armour doesn't work as armour, why are you wearing it? And these guys, it's not even like they just have mail shirts, which then I could accept a spear might go straight through. They're actually wearing what's called a coat of plates, which are plates, steel plates, riveted on the inside of a leather or fabric garment over the top of a mail shirt, over the top of a gambeson. So they've essentially got 3 layers of protection, and these spears don't only go through the front, they go through the back as well. Those are some super like Olympic super plus level javelin throwers they've got on the Lannister team, so you know they must have paid a lot of money for those guys. But yeah, spears generally speaking will not go entirely through a person's body when thrown like this, through armour, through 3 levels of armour, and then essentially 6 levels of armour because out of the back as well. It's kind of not realistic. But yes, spears are cool, and I like the fact that there are thrown spears in the narrative. So overall, I like that, but they should have had the location of the spears going in, like at the neck or armpit or somewhere where there's an opening in the armour, because that would have shown accuracy and penetrative power instead of this straight through the middle of the armour in the torso. Nice spear parry. I like the way that was done, whether it's against bayonets or spears or any kind of thrusting weapon like this. The thrusting longer weapon does have an advantage in general in close combat. But if you have a sword, if you have a dagger or a short sword or even an axe or a mace, then your job is to close the line, get in as close as quickly as possible. So he's done a good solid parry, exactly as would be recommended in the fighting treatises of the day, and he's closed in. Perfect. Have no problem with that at all. What I do have a problem with is cutting through armour. Again, we're dealing with people who've got some sort of plate defences, brigandine or coat of plates type thing on their outer surface, probably mail and gambeson underneath, and he's just drawn his edge across the surface of that armour. What did that guy die from? What was he incapacitated by? It would be like someone just basically bumping you in the tummy with a broom handle. It wouldn't do anything at all. And yet, just like in all of these movie fights, it's a safe kind of blow to do. They often have actors do this kind of blow with the edge of the blade into the stomach because it's safe and easy to teach actors to do. It looks effective on screen, but if you actually know anything about cutting with swords and you know anything about armour, you know that this would do less than nothing. It would not even tickle. The way to have made that more effective would be after the parry, instead do a cut to the leg. The leg is uncovered more or less, it's covered by clothing. So to cut down below the armour or thrust into a gap in the armour, that would have been just as easy, would have been looked just as effective on screen, and would have been a lot more realistic. And I think actually would have looked more brutal and given people more of a sense of a real fight rather than people just bashing each other's armour. Jaime does a nice, composed and relaxed parry defense of that attack. It's a bit unclear what attack that was. It looked like it was a big swing coming in, but then it seemed to land like a thrust. I suspect in reality what it was a big swing which wasn't actually aimed at the actor, wasn't actually aimed at the opponent, which is an artifact we see a lot in movie and TV fights. Often the blows are aimed over the head or to the side and thrusts are aimed offline and stuff like this. It's a safety thing, but it's the camera person's job to try and angle it so it looks like it's actually aimed at the opponent. But anyway, Jaime does a nice relaxed defense of that attack. And I think that's actually a great big bit of characterization within the fight. This is where fight choreography is going well, because Jaime's looking relaxed and in control of the fight, which is exactly what Jaime's supposed to be, because he's supposed to be one of the greatest swordsmen, perhaps the greatest swordsman alive in Westeros at the time. So it tells you about his character, and it was not badly done. Even if the attack was badly done, the defense was fine. And yeah, I think that's kind of a classy way to finish, classy so to speak, a dagger to the eye. But there we go. I think it's good. It shows the fact that he's got multiple weapons. It shows the fact that he's composed, in control of the fight, and basically he really easily won that particular engagement, which is right for that character to show you how formidable he is, which sets you up for the rest of the stories to come. Not so sure about the person remaining conscious for several seconds while having a dagger through their brain, but you know, I'm not a doctor, so who knows. Holding the point out online, good way to keep someone away while you catch your breath. Ned knocks it up, fine. Let's just look at Ned's attack then. Remember what I was saying about attacks not aimed at the opponent? What is Ned attacking? It's certainly not Jaime. Good mixture of cuts and different types of beats and parries. Why are they back to back? Okay, so I understand that this is a movie fight. It's supposed to be flamboyant, but I think they've watched Revenge of the Sith too many times. What's this back to back stuff? In case you were wondering, generally speaking, turning your back on someone who you're having a sword fight with is a really bad idea. Not to say that it never happened, but it's generally a bad idea. And when both people turn their backs to each other, that's a really special occasion. Jaime's signature sword guard, the weird kind of... How does he put his arms like that? I don't know. It's supposed to be something akin to Ox or Posta de Fenestra from the fencing treatises. In fact, we find similar guards in Japanese systems as well with the katana in Kenjutsu. But the fact is that he doesn't sort of hold it right. But, you know, hey, someone can hold the sword however they want, I guess. There are a lot of attacks at the legs coming in this, and I understand why the fight choreographer put these in for variety, so that they weren't only attacking high lines, but they go high, low, to make it look more varied. I suppose to their perception, look more like a real sword fight. But one of the problems is when you're standing very close to people, they're not using really historical footwork, okay? They're just kind of staying in distance and moving around each other. And the problem is if you go low, you leave everything high exposed. And because geometry, your weapon's attached to your arm's attached to your shoulder's attached up here, not down at your hip. So you can always reach the furthest when it's in the height of your shoulder. If someone attacks down at the legs, you can always move backwards slightly. I know that's a radical idea. You can move backwards slightly and they can't reach you but in the leg, but you can reach them in the head. And so the problem is, because they're trying to keep the actors in frame, they're standing very close together and they're going high, low, high, low, high, low. But in reality, just so you know, in a real sword fight, if someone attacks low at this distance, the person who's being attacked at their legs can just move backwards a little bit, which admittedly would be out of frame here, and just hit the other person in the head, and that would be the end of the fight. A nice thing, Jaime goes down with the front edge and comes up with the back edge. That's great. That is actual proper historical longsword technique that we find in a number of treatises from the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And the fact is that he's using both edges of the sword, and that's actually not something you see very often in movie and TV sword fights. And that's great. This is a two-edged sword, and historically two-edged swords, both of the edges were used quite extensively. So it's great that they actually show, although fleetingly, the back edge of the sword being used. It didn't hit, but it was an attack nevertheless. Great stuff, Jaime. Ned really wants to get Jaime in the kneecap. I don't know why he's so obsessed with attacking the legs. The movie sword bind, where we cross swords really close to each other's hands and go into each other's faces. This is beloved of Hollywood and all movie and screen sword fights. And unfortunately, whilst it does happen, in reality, there are so many things that can happen from that point. Pummeling the person in the face, just changing the angle of the sword so you hit them on the top of the head with the blade, or pulling back, ploughing through, wrestling, disarms. There are whole treatises written on what to do from that point. And for some reason in movies they never do any of these things. At most they have a conversation while going and pushing each other's blades. So a little bit disappointed to see that in this fight, especially at this point, because I don't think it adds anything to the tension or the drama or the pace of the fight. And stabbed in the arse. Yeah, we know that that's how this fight ends, and I actually think that's a great dramatic storytelling way for the fight to end, and not the way that the viewer at that point, unless you've read the books, is expecting the fight to end. And I actually think that's really, really good. I also love the way that Jaime then responds. This says so much about Jaime's character and sets him up and sets the frame of who he is and what he's about. He is a knight, he is about honour. He may do some terrible things, he may have dubious morals, but when it comes to knightly and honour-bound things, he usually, if not always, does the right thing. And certainly this is setting this character up in your mind as a knight who follows chivalric ideals. So thanks for watching this fight review of Ned Stark versus Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones Season 1. I hope you've enjoyed it. I love doing these. I was, as I say, I am and was a big fan of Game of Thrones, and whatever you think about how they wrapped it up on the TV show. But I'm really enjoying going back and looking at some of these fights. I have done previous ones if you look in my playlist. So again, link below to my movie and TV fight review playlist. Give us a like and a subscribe. I've got more videos, many more videos like this in my back catalogue, and there will be more coming. If there is a particular fight from a movie or TV show that you want me to do, then comment below. And you can get in contact with the channel through Facebook or any of the other means linked here. We've got extra videos on Patreon. And I will see you really soon for another video on Schola Gladiatoria channel. Thanks for joining me, Matt Easton, and I will see you soon. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.